Welcome back to Conversations with Kyle. Kyle represents Fidelity Charitable, and specifically the donor advised fund side of the business and different charitable giving entities within that. And today we're going to talk about the collapse of private foundations. And this is something that's happening across the US. And we wanted to kind of give more color to it. So if you are part of a private foundation or if you have some ideas or desires to create your own foundation, some of the things that you may want to consider, right? So, Kyle, what is going on in this space? Why are private foundations changing how they operate or how people start private foundations and decide to do other vehicles instead?
Mm-hmm. Well, Amar, I think it's important to take a step back and realize that private foundations were really the major source of America's top philanthropists in the ways they give to charity 20, 30, 40, even 100 years ago. But within the last 10 years, donor advised funds have been getting a lot more popularity, a lot more application with everyday philanthropists, everybody that gives from just a few $100s a year to hundreds of millions. And the main reason is because a lot of folks realize that what they're doing in a private foundation can be accomplished in the context of a donor advised fund as well. So it's just the gap of, okay, well, who am I getting advice from? What do I really want to accomplish philanthropically? And that's really created a shift of those that are saying, well, I've always thought about a foundation being the right route to, well, I can do the same thing in a donor advised fund with a little bit less hassle. Right now, donor advised funds are being opened at a rate of about 12 to 1 to that of private foundations.
That is some great statistics. So let's unpack that, because I have a lot of clients that let's say you're a business owner, you get to the point in your life where you want to sell your business, and then you want some charitable piece of that sale. And they do set up private foundations because they want a very specific way of how they want to help in the community. But oftentimes that's generation one, right? So what happens when generation two takes over? Are they continuing with this private foundations? Or, because I'm assuming that's leading some of the statistics in this.
It is. And it's actually a good point with business owners is that what a lot of folks don't realize is that when you give anything that's non-publicly traded, so we're talking about real estate, private business interests, anything that's not marketable immediately, donors can only take a cost basis tax deduction when they fund those assets into a private foundation. That's what you paid for it, right? So that's a really small deduction compared to fair market value that you'd receive when contributing that same asset to a public charity or to a donor advised fund. That's a huge difference. And what I think a lot of folks realize that private foundations are always open for the right reasons, right? They want to give to charity in a structured way, have some branding behind it. But what happens is that generations 2 and 3 might A, not have the same charitable ambitions, or B, might sort of have their own lives and their own families, right? And that's where we see it, the application of private foundations moving into donor advised funds a lot, is when that generational transfer happens. I was actually just in the office of a lawyer last week helping a family move their private foundation to 3 donor advised funds. Their kids are now in their 50s. They all have their own families. They live in different areas of the country, and the private foundation becomes more of a hassle than a benefit. So those are always great opportunities. And the family realizes, hey, we're just giving out to charity. We don't have a staff. We don't have any type of responsibilities in terms of traveling to different charities. All of that can be accomplished in the context of the donor advised fund. So they're just making their lives easier.
Yeah, so that's another key point is the simplicity of having a donor advised fund versus figuring out staffing and different locations and all the other billables that go in within that. Makes it a lot easier for business owners or individuals that are in that position. What about we talk about the simplicity, we talk about the shift, from a tax perspective. What about the actual giving itself? Is it easier to give through a donor advised fund versus a private foundation?
Well, keep in mind, the private foundation is almost like its own business, and it needs a lot of accounting behind it in order to justify being able to file the tax return and being able to be compliant with the IRS. Within the context of the donor advised fund, the gifting is there's no real tax implication of sending funds out of the account to favorite charities, right? So it's the ease is not writing checks and having to make sure they're cashed and going through all of that in the private foundation context. It's just, okay, I can go online, send out funds to my favorite charities, use an app and send it from my smartphone to my favorite charities. So that's, the giving piece happens a lot, I guess, a lot easier in the context of a donor advised fund. That's why when people get older in age, like, hey, we want to make our lives easier, not harder. No more tax filing anymore with the IRS and the private foundation, making our gifting easier. Is all reasons why people like to do those transitions.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if you're watching this and you've thought of a private foundation, if you have a business and you're looking to kind of have a charitable angle to exiting that business, consider donor advised funds to be a piece of that business transaction. Also, if you're thinking about generations 1, 2, and 3, in terms of making sure there's continuity within the family of giving, consider the donor advised fund as a way to simplify that. And then obviously we just talked about, giving directly. It's a lot easier when you can do it from, a phone rather than, having a CFO and some paperwork to be filled out within the foundation to kind of verify all these transactions are happening. So if you watch this video and you like this type of content, please hit the like button. It helps other people find our videos. Also, if you have questions or comments around donor advised funds or anything charitable giving related, please put it in the comments below. We'll do our best to answer those as soon as possible. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.